Preacher 357 here. Out here on the range, another windy day. It is springtime in the south. And I've got another snake gun here. Another Colt. It is the Colt Cobra. Now the Colt Cobra is something of a reissued gun, but not in the same sense that the Python is reissued, because the Colt Python they just came out with in 2020 is very, very much like the Colt Python that they made, going back into the 90s and before. 357, it looks almost the same. Now there's some different lock work in it. They've made some changes to it, but it's very much along the same lines as the original Python. It looks a lot like it, a lot of characteristics in common. This Colt Cobra that Colt has come out with now, which I think they came out with it in 17, I believe. But this reissued Colt Cobra is really not a Colt Cobra, at least not in the sense of the original. The original Colt Cobra was an aluminum alloy framed handgun. This is an all steel handgun. So when they came back out with the Colt Cobra, rather than going with an aluminum frame like the original, they went with a steel frame. And so essentially the new Colt Cobra is a reissue of the Colt Detective Special. They just don't call it the Detective Special, they call it the Colt Cobra now. We can guess as to why they did it that way. I guess the name Cobra, from a marketing standpoint, probably does better, they thought, in the market, especially with the popularity of those snake names that they use, versus a Detective Special, right? Which seems a lot like something a police officer would carry, obviously, right? Rather than just something the public would want. So it makes sense that they would do that, when putting this gun out. Rather than calling it a Detective Special, they would call it something else. And Cobra seems like a pretty good name for it, because the Colt Cobra was essentially the same gun as the Detective Special. It just had the aluminum frame. The Colt Detective Special had the steel frame. And so the new Colt Cobra has a steel frame. It's basically a D-frame Colt. Now it's an upgraded D-frame. It's not like the old one. This is obviously in a stainless steel. It's in a bead blasted type of finish here. This was designed to be a carry gun. This was what Colt was going for when they put this gun out, was to provide a gun that people in the marketplace would want for carry, a revolver that you could put on your waistband. And so here we have it, the Colt Cobra. It was the first of their reissues of revolvers. They had stopped making revolvers essentially in about 99, though I think you could still get a few of them a little later than that, but their double action revolvers pretty much went out of production in 99. And so in 2017, when this came out, it had been 18 years basically since they had made revolvers. And so they were entering that market again, and I guess they wanted to start small with a Colt Cobra, which this is just in 38 Special. That's all this shoots, is the 38 Special cartridge. It's not a 357. The King Cobra, which they came out with later, is the 357 Magnum version. This is just the 38 Special version. This gun weighs 25 ounces, so it's not light. But that's not too terribly bad. A lot of your polymer frame guns that were popular, or still popular, run in that range as well. Your M&Ps, I think, are running in the 25 ounce range. Glock maybe just a little bit below that. So it's not completely out of the ballpark as far as guns that you would carry, but it's not as light as the original Cobra, which was about 17 ounces. And in fact, it's even heavier than the Detective Special was. The Detective Special was only about 21 ounces. So this gun is a little bit more beefed up than the Detective Special was as well. But this frame size that Colt has had for years. I mean, this is not something new. The Detective Special was this same size of gun. In fact, from what I understand, I believe the old holsters that were made for those D-frames will fit this gun as well. It was designed to be that same size gun, because it's something of what you might say is a Goldilocks size. It's that size of revolver that a lot of people are looking at as being the right size. It's large enough to still contain 6 rounds, which this does. It's still a 6-shooter. And yet it's small enough to carry and still be somewhat thin. And so you're seeing a lot of guns that are kind of hitting this niche now. The Kimber K6S is roughly in this same size range. Taurus has just came out with a new offering, the 856, which is basically their Model 85, which was the same as a Smith & Wesson J-frame, that they beefed up a little bit to put a larger cylinder to hold the 6 rounds. Just a slightly larger cylinder, I believe, but it holds 6 rounds now. So the 856 Taurus is competing directly against the Colt, obviously for a lot less money, but it's in that size range now. Smith & Wesson still doesn't offer anything in that size range, neither does Ruger. So this was, before Colt came out with this revolver, there really wasn't anything in this size range anymore. Since they stopped making the Detective Specials and the Cobras, this 6-shot revolver in this size was off the market. And it seems to have been somewhat popular, because you see all these other companies starting to clamor now to put something out in that same size range. But not Smith & Wesson, at least not yet. Smith & Wesson make a J-frame, which is like this Model 36 right here, or like Smitty, which I have here on my waistband. They're the same size gun here, a J-frame. And they also make a K-frame. This is my Model 65. The J-frame is only a 5-shooter. The K-frame is a 6-shooter, but it is larger than the Colt, and I'll show you that here. If we look at the Colt and the K-frame side by side right here, I think you can see fairly well that the K-frame is a beefier gun. Now obviously this is, K-frame is a 3-inch barrel versus a 2.5. I'm not talking about barrel length here, I'm talking strictly about the width here, about the size of the cylinder, about how beefy the gun is. And it's a smaller gun. The Colt Cobra is a smaller gun than the K-frame, but it's slightly larger than the J-frame. We can put these up side to side here, and you can see that the Cobra is slightly wider. It's a little bit bigger, and it has to be in order to chamber 6 rounds. But it's right in between these two sizes. It's like a J+ size, and I wish Smith & Wesson would do something like that. I wish they would jump on the bandwagon and come out with a Model 60 with a 6-shot cylinder. They could call it a J+ frame or whatever they want to call it. The 60 plus, kind of like the 686 plus, which has 7 rounds in the L frame. And I keep expecting Smith & Wesson to do something similar, but maybe they just don't think that there's enough market outside of what they're already doing to make it worth their while to develop a new gun, to put a different type of cylinder in them. I don't know, but I keep hoping, because I am a Smith & Wesson guy. And as much as I like this Colt, and I do like this Colt, I wish it was a Smith & Wesson. There's no way around it. That's just how I am. So let's do a little bit of shooting here with the Colt Cobra, and how it stacks up also with the K-frame. Said this was 25 ounces. This one right here, of course, it's a little bit longer barrel. That's going to change things a little bit, but this gun here I think is 34 ounces. So 9 ounces more is a significant amount. Even when you take the barrel and into consideration being longer, you're still considerably heavier with that K-frame than you are with this Colt Cobra. But this right here, the J-frame, is only about 19 ounces for an all-steel, whereas Smitty here is only about 14 ounces. So there's a considerable difference between Smitty and this right here. That's one reason why Smitty's on my waist, why Smitty is even in my pocket, because he's small, right? And this one sits at home. Well, that's one reason. Not the only reason, but that is one reason that the Colt just doesn't go with me very often. I've carried it on occasions, just to be doing it. I like to throw in a little variety in my life every now and then, but you don't want too much of a variety, right? You want to use the same the same gun most of the time when you're carrying, because you want that familiarity. You want that same manual arms and that same method of draw, and everything needs to be the same, right? That's the best way to carry a gun, is to always be familiar with it and have it the same all the time, if at all possible. Now, obviously, both are revolvers. Both are just pull and shoot. There's no safety or anything involved, so it's not like there's that big of a difference between them. But just the same, the Colt doesn't go with me very often. Most of the time, it's Smitty or this one if I want to go with something bigger. Every now and then I'll throw this one on just because I like a blued gun and it's just pretty on the waist, but not often. This one stays in the safe most of the time. It doesn't go with me very often, but let's go ahead and put some rounds down range. I said that before, and then I started yapping again. You know how I am about yapping. I like to yap. But let's load some of these hand loads of mine up here in this gun. These are 158 grain round nose. We're gonna load up in here, loaded with some bullseye powder. And let's see if I can hit anything with it. Generally speaking, I'm decently accurate with this gun, at least I have been in the past, but not at distance. At these plates here at 20 yards, I can shoot fairly well, but I have never, to this day, hit the plate at 80 yards with this gun. Don't ask me why. I don't know why I can't get the range. I don't know what it is, because it shoots well. I don't understand it. Never been able to figure it out, but I cannot get the range at 80 yards with this gun. I have yet to ever hit that plate, so I'm not even going to bother trying today. Hope y'all don't mind. I know y'all like seeing me get frustrated and get upset, but not going to do it today. So let's just go over here and shoot at the plates at 20 yards, maybe throw one out there at 35, and that'll just have to be good enough. All right, guys, let's do a little bit of shooting now. See if I can hit anything at all. Six shots still ain't a lot, but it's enough. It is definitely enough. Load a few more up here. It shoots really well. There's only one thing about this gun that I just really don't like, and that's the trigger reset. We were talking recently about that Smith & Wesson CSX, about how it has a false reset. Well, this Colt does too. It does the same sort of thing. When you get almost all the way out on the trigger, there's a place where it feels like it resets. And there are occasions where I will pull the trigger again thinking I've got it all the way out, and I don't. You have to let this thing all the way out. And it's not as bad as the CSX. I don't have near as much trouble with it, but I still run into that on occasions where I pull the trigger again and it ain't there because it didn't reset. So let's shoot a little bit more here. I'm going to keep on shooting mostly double action here. I like to shoot at double action. It has a good trigger. It's got a nice trigger. It's not as crisp as a Smith. I'm almost positive that this one is a coil mainspring. I meant to take the grips off and make sure I wasn't crazy, because I'm almost positive it's a coil mainspring versus a leaf mainspring on this, and it feels like a coil. You know, the Python fooled me a little bit when I first shot it. It is a leaf mainspring. With this, I'm almost positive is a coil mainspring, and there is some stacking. It gets heavier as you go back. Now, it's not a heavy trigger, but it's not an especially crisp trigger either. Now, a lot of people like this trigger on this gun because it does feel a little bit lighter than a Smith initially. That initial pull is fairly light and it stacks. It gets heavier as you go back, whereas a Smith is more consistent all the way through. And so it's lighter at the get-go when you first start pulling the trigger, and that's what a lot of people notice. You know, they're able to get the trigger going easier, and they prefer that to that consistent trigger pull. But I've been shooting revolvers for so long, and I shoot double action on them so much that the weight of a revolver trigger on a Smith & Wesson, you know, a standard weight is not that bad for me. So I prefer that consistency. But this isn't a bad trigger even with the stacking. It's not like it stacks so bad that it just messes you completely up, but it doesn't feel as perfect as a Smith. It's just not as crisp as a Smith. It just doesn't feel like that finely tuned machine like a Smith & Wesson does when you pull that trigger. But let's shoot a little bit more here. Let's go at 35 and see if I can get anything out there. Let's see if I can get this thing. Apparently not. Let's try it again. There we go. Now where am I going? There we go. I'm hitting it at the bottom. Ain't I? Get it up a little bit. Out of ammo already. It's a shame it runs out so fast because it's really expensive. As much as ammo costs these days, you think it'd last longer, right? You think they'd make it last longer. I'm not sure how they would do that, but it'd be nice if they would. Because it sure does cost a lot of money, even as a reloader. You know, of course, you can't even find primers right now, but you know, even the cost of reloading has went up considerably. And I might be possibly addicted because I can't seem to stop. So they kind of got me where they want me, I guess. It's kind of like with smokers, right? Used to be, you know, well, when cigarettes get to be $1 a pack, I'm going to quit. And then it was, well, when cigarettes get to be $2 a pack, I'm going to quit. And then it was, when cigarettes get to be $5 a pack, I'm going to quit, right? And then people just keep smoking because they're addicted. Well, I could be addicted because I really like to shoot, and the cost is really not stopping me. So we all have to have our vices, right? All right, let's do a little shooting. I went high on that one. I know what I did on that one. I pulled the trigger too quick. I wasn't on target when I snapped that trigger. And believe it or not, when you do that, you miss. All right, let's shoot a little bit more. I like to shoot. You hadn't noticed. You need to like to shoot too. Everybody needs to like to shoot. That's my whole goal here, is to convince you to come out and shoot. Now, not here because, you know, my wife wouldn't like that very much. You know, but at your own place, right? Or at your local range, or wherever, right? Go out and shoot. Learn how to use a gun, right? If you don't know how to already. Because you're just nothing like it. As I've always said, it's an explosion in your hand, right? Now, I've had people try to argue it's not an explosion. Well, it's an explosion. It's not an out-of-control explosion, right? It's a contained explosion. But that's really what it is, right? You have that reaction going on inside of the chamber here, where this powder is being set off, and there's a massive release of gases from that pushes that projectile down the barrel. It's an explosion that's in your hand. I don't know what could be more cool than that. What is more awesome than having an explosion in your hand? I don't know. Well, as long as you keep your fingers right. Now, I mean, you can set off some dynamite in your hand and have an explosion in your hand, but then you wouldn't have your fingers left. So it's an explosion in your hand where you keep your fingers. Put it that way. Let's shoot a little bit more. I think I just did that. It didn't. Yep, it didn't reset. I pulled the trigger again, nothing happened. Wasn't nothing there. That's what I was talking about. That false reset. Chamber's sticky there, I guess. Had a couple of stick. Of course, I have no way of knowing if it's the same chamber. I don't have that one marked or anything. May just be the brass. Some of this brass, I ain't no telling how many times I've reloaded this stuff. You can reload 38 Special Brass over and over and over again because it's a low pressure cartridge and it doesn't wear the brass out very quick at all. So there's no telling how many loadings that have been done on some of these cases. All right. A bit of a flinch there. This is a nice revolver. It is. It is a nice revolver. It's just not a Smith. But if you're a Colt fan, if you like Colt, then this may be the gun for you. I mean, it's got a lot of great qualities to it. I mean, it looks nice. It feels good in the hand. I mean, the trigger's not as crisp as a Smith, but it's still a good trigger. You can get good accuracy with it. You just need to make sure you train with it enough that you don't get caught with that false reset. I need to shoot this more than I do, but you know, that's the only downside to it, is really having to watch that. Some people don't have an issue with it. I have a little bit of an issue, but not as much as with that CSX. Of course, there's one problem obviously that we have with all of the Colts. They have a massive design flaw that Colt has yet to ever rectify, and that's that the cylinder turns the wrong direction. When I pull the trigger, the cylinder turns clockwise, which is absolutely backwards. It's wrong. The cylinder is supposed to turn counterclockwise, but all of the Colts turn clockwise, and they have yet to ever figure out how to rectify that. I guess they've just given up and decided, you know, it's good enough, and they don't have to be as good as the Smith. You know, you think they would cut the price a little bit, because the Colts are, you know, they're pricey guns. They're not as cheap as a Smith & Wesson. And you'd think for having a massive design flaw like that they would cut the price a little bit. But they don't. You know? It's just part of it. If you buy a Colt, you just have to realize the cylinder turns the wrong way. Of course, there's a lot of Colt guys out there right now who think the Smith & Wesson's turning the wrong way, right? You can think that. You'd be wrong, obviously, because you know, Smith is always right, except for the CSX. Still irks me. Still irks me. Let's shoot just a little bit more, and then I'm gonna let you go. This don't have to be a long video. I say that all the time, don't I? It don't have to be a long video. It's just I tend to be long-winded, and I won't shut up. And because I don't shut up, the videos tend to be long. And here I am right now, talking and not shutting up. So let me shoot a little bit more, and then I'll let you go. I'm gonna be nice this time. I mean, I've done a lot of talking here lately, and I imagine you guys are really tired of it. So I need a clock here. See, at church when I'm preaching, I've got a clock behind me, and I can see the clock, and I can know then, you know, whether I'm going too long or not. Here, I get to going, and I get to talking and having a good time, and before I know it, you know, 40 minutes have went by sometimes, and you don't know how that's happened. But, you know, you're just having such a good time out here shooting. It's just like you come out to the range with your buddies and you're all joking around, having a good time. Before you know it, you know, hours are passed. Luckily, the battery on that camera is not that good, so if I went that long, the battery would die, so you don't have to worry about that. But let me shoot just a little bit more. What are you doing? I'm going to try to hit that little bitty one. Before I run out of ammo. And that may be it. Yeah, I need to try to hit that little plate. It's there. If I don't hit it, it'll make fun of me and tease me for the rest of the week. So I better do my best to try to hit it. All right, let's see if we can't put around on it. I can figure out where to hold it. There we go, look at there. This is a good shooting gun. And there's no doubt about it, this is a good shooting gun. And all this complaining about it's not a Smith & Wesson, I think you guys know that's just a personal preference, and you know, I'm just joking a little bit too, because I like Smith better, but I'm never going to run down a Colt. I'm never going to talk bad about a Colt because they're good guns. Ruger is a good gun. I don't know if I've ever found a gun I didn't like, so, you know, I've got Colts and Rugers and Smith and Wessons and you name it, so if I didn't like them, I wouldn't buy them. This isn't a gun that I bought just to do a video with that I'm going to get rid of after the fact. This is a gun I bought because I wanted it. So, you know, take everything I say with a grain of salt because, well, I'm full of it a lot of times. But let me shoot just a little bit more. This will be the last cylinder, as long as I hit on the last round, obviously. If I don't hit the last round, I've got to shoot again. Alright. Well, that wasn't the best shooting I've ever done. Miss a 12-inch and a 10-inch plate, but that wasn't a gun, that was just me. That was just me not paying attention enough. That's what happens sometimes with those big plates. You just think it's so easy to hit, you don't try too hard. You don't focus as much because you think you can just kind of throw the sights up there anywhere close to it and you're probably going to hit it because it's big, but you can miss them too if you're not careful. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you coming out to see the Colt Cobra, a gun I do like, even if it's not a Smith & Wesson. It's a nice shooting gun, and glad I bought it. Glad I could bring it to you. Glad y'all come out and see. So God bless you. Y'all take care of yourself. We'll see you next time.